Welcome, everyone. You've tuned in for something a bit different today, a unique deep dive.
That's right.
We're focusing on the top 5 AI news stories from today, Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. We're calling it AI Daily Deep Dive.
And what's really interesting here is that this entire deep dive, I mean, the research, the structure, even how we're talking about it now, it's all been put together by AI.
Exactly. So let's just jump right into these stories. They're pretty fascinating.
Okay, so today we're aiming to give you a clear, concise overview of some really significant things happening in the AI world right now. It covers quite a range.
A real snapshot, yeah. Things move so fast.
They really do.
All right, first up, Aytekin Tank. He's the founder and CEO of Jotform.
Ah, yes, Jotform.
He's spent a good part of this year, 2025, testing out, well, dozens of different AI agents, and he shared some really interesting takeaways.
Okay, so when we say AI agents, what are we talking about here based on Tank's view?
Good question. He describes them as software, basically, using machine learning, predictive analytics, that kind of thing, and rule-based logic, too. The key is they perform tasks autonomously.
Autonomously. So without constant human hand-holding, like digital helpers working on their own.
Pretty much. And his tests really showed where they shine. Tank found they're great for tasks that are very specific, really well-defined.
Like what kinds of tasks?
Things like scheduling meetings, handling a routine data entry, answering those common customer service questions, stuff like that.
Right, the repetitive, predictable jobs. And how do they actually do that? How do they operate?
Well, they perceive their environment, maybe using natural language processing to understand text or image recognition. Then they process that info based on their programming and, take action.
Makes sense. But it can't all be smooth sailing, surely. Did Tank find limitations?
Oh, absolutely. That was a big part of his findings. He noted they often struggle when things get nuanced.
Nuanced, as in?
As in situations requiring empathy or really complex decision-making with lots of gray areas and competing factors.
Okay, so they're not great with ambiguity or sort of human-like understanding yet.
Exactly. Which, when you think about it, makes sense, right? They really depend heavily on the quality of data they were trained on.
Garbage in, garbage out, essentially.
Precisely. And how specific their programming is. If the instructions aren't crystal clear or if they hit something unexpected.
They can stumble. Make errors, maybe.
Yeah, potentially, if those parameters aren't set really clearly.
Which logically leads to the next point Tank stressed, I imagine, human oversight.
You got it. Crucial. He emphasized that even with autonomous agents, you still need people watching, making sure they're accurate, doing what they're supposed to do.
They're powerful tools, but still tools. Not quite independent colleagues yet.
Not yet, no. And like any tool, they need upkeep. Tank highlighted that continuous training, constant updates, are essential for them to stay relevant and effective.
The learning can't stop once they're deployed, right? The world keeps changing.
Exactly. So the AI needs to keep up.
So, wrapping up Tank's findings, what's the big picture takeaway?
He definitely sees huge potential for AI agents to transform businesses, automating tasks, boosting productivity. The promise is there.
But there's always a but.
But it needs careful planning. It needs that ongoing human oversight we talked about. And importantly, a real commitment to the ethical side of things.
Ethics like data privacy, transparency, accountability, those issues Tank also raised.
Yes, exactly. Those are critical considerations.
Okay, a really practical look at AI agents. What's next?
Next, we shift gears to Anthropic. The AI company founded by some ex-OpenAI folks.
Right, Claude's creators.
That's them. They've just put out some really fascinating research. They analyzed, get this, 700,000 conversations their AI, Claude, had with users.
700,000. Wow, that's a massive data set. What were they looking for?
They were trying to understand Claude's sort of moral code in action, seeing how its values play out in real interaction.
Based on their own framework, right? That helpful, honest, harmless mantra.
Exactly. They wanted to see if Claude actually lives up to that in practice, based on this huge pile of real-world data.
A really ambitious project. They looked at, what, over 300,000 conversations with subjective content?
Yeah, over 308,000. And from that, they developed what they're calling the first large-scale empirical taxonomy of AI values. Quite a mouthful.
Taxonomy of AI values.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're trying to map out the principles Claude expresses. How did they categorize them?
They boil it down to 5 main categories for us. Practical, epistemic, which is about knowledge and truth, social, protective, and personal. But within those, it gets incredibly granular.
How granular?
They identified 3,307 unique values.
Whoa, 3,307. Can you give us a feel for what some of those are, like a few examples?
Sure. Things like professionalism, acknowledging different ethical views, they call it moral pluralism, self-reliance, strategic thinking, even things like filial piety, respect for parents.
Okay, so a really wide spectrum, from practical workplace stuff to deep ethical considerations. Did Claude generally stick to the helpful, honest, harmless script?
Mostly, yes. The research indicated that Claude generally aligns with Anthropic's goals. It often expressed values like enabling the user, showing epistemic humility, admitting what it doesn't know,
Okay.
and prioritizing the user's well-being, like patient well-being in health contexts.
But, sense another but coming, were there exceptions?
There were. They found what they called troubling instances, moments where Claude expressed values contrary to their aims,
Like what?
things like dominance or even amorality.
Oof. That sounds not ideal. Do they know why that happened?
They think it's linked to what are called jailbroken outputs. Basically, users trying to trick Claude into bypassing its safety rules.
So people deliberately poking holes in the system, and this value analysis helps spot that.
Seems like it. It suggests tracking these expressed values could actually be a way to find and fix vulnerabilities.
Interesting. Okay, what else did they find? Anything about context?
Yes, that was fascinating. They found Claude's values shift depending on the conversation topic. It's quite adaptable.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, if someone asked for relationship advice, Claude might emphasize healthy boundaries, mutual respect.
Okay.
But if the topic was history, it would focus more on historical accuracy. If it was a philosophical chat about AI, it leaned into intellectual humility.
And for something like marketing?
For beauty industry marketing content, it stressed expertise. So it tailors its value expression.
That's quite sophisticated. What about how it responded to the user's values? Did it just agree all the time?
Not always. In about 28% of conversations, it strongly supported the user's values. In around 6.6%, it sort of reframed them, acknowledged them, but maybe offered a different angle, especially when giving advice.
And resistance. Did it ever push back?
Rarely. Only in about 3% of cases did Claude actively resist a user's stated values.
Only 3%. And what did Anthropic think those moments revealed?
They speculated that these rare instances might show Claude's deepest kind of non-negotiable values, the core principles it won't compromise on.
Such as?
Things like intellectual honesty and preventing harm seem to be examples.
Very interesting. Did the research touch on how Claude makes these decisions, that sort of black box problem?
A little, yeah. They mentioned their work on mechanistic interpretability, basically trying to peek inside the model's workings.
Trying to understand the why.
Right.
Yeah.
They even used a technique they called a microscope to watch its processes. And apparently it revealed some unexpected stuff.
Like what?
Like Claude seemingly planning ahead when writing poetry, or using weird shortcuts for basic math problems, stuff they didn't explicitly teach it.
Wow. Okay, so boiling this all down, what are the key takeaways, especially for businesses or people thinking about deploying AI like this?
Anthropic points to a few things. First, AI might express unintended values, which could mean hidden biases.
Right.
Second, value alignment isn't simple. It changes with context. That's tricky, especially in regulated fields.
Makes sense.
And third, you really need to keep evaluating how AI behaves in the real world, not just in the lab. Continuous monitoring is key.
And Anthropic's being quite open about this, right?
Yeah.
Releasing the data set.
They are. Making that values data set public. It's definitely an interesting move, positioning them perhaps differently from competitors like OpenAI.
That focus on transparency and ethics could be a real differentiator.
Yeah.
Okay, where do we go next?
From AI values to Hollywood. Story number 3. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the Oscars folks, have issued new guidelines.
About AI, I assume.
Yes, specifically about using generative AI in filmmaking for the 2026 Oscars. Very timely.
Definitely. So what's the verdict? Is AI welcome at the Oscars or not?
Well, they're clarifying how AI-generated elements will be treated for eligibility and awards.
And the official stance is?
Basically, using AI doesn't automatically help or hurt a film's chances. The crucial factor remains human creative authorship.
So the human element is still paramount.
Absolutely. Each Academy branch will still judge films based on the level of human input in the key creative decisions and how well those were executed.
That feels like a necessary clarification, especially with films already using AI in various ways, like that Brutalist example with the language performances.
Exactly. Situations like that probably spurred the Academy to formalize this. Their position really frames AI as a tool.
A tool in the filmmaker's kit.
Right. But the core creative vision, the authorship, that has to be human.
So they're not banning AI, just setting expectations.
Precisely. The guideline isn't about restricting AI use. It's more about transparency and ensuring human intent is driving its application, whether that's in, writing, editing, voice work, visual effects, whatever.
Finding that balance between embracing new tech and upholding the value of human creativity.
That seems to be the goal. Making sure the Oscars keep celebrating human artistry, even as the available tools get more advanced.
Did the announcement mention any other rule changes?
Briefly, yes.
Yeah.
2 others for 2026. Mandatory viewing of all nominated films, which seems sensible, and a whole new competitive category for casting.
Oh, that's been talked about for a while. Good for casting directors. So this AI guideline sets a precedent then.
Seems like it. Emphasizing that human creative force while acknowledging technology marches on.
Okay, story 4 takes us to academia. Harvard's Radcliffe Institute held a conference recently.
Yes, on April 11th. It was called Gender and AI, Promise and Perils.
Sounds important. Who was there?
A real mix. Researchers, tech people, policy experts, activists, a multidisciplinary crowd looking at AI through gender lens.
And how do they structure the discussion?
It was broken down into 3 main parts, which kind of cover the AI lifecycle: inputs, outputs, and policy and advocacy.
Okay, let's take those one by one. Inputs, what was the focus there?
Inputs looked at how bias gets baked in right from the start, through the data used for training.
The garbage in, garbage out idea again.
Right. Finale Doshi-Velez from Harvard hit that point. But she also talked about structural inputs.
Meaning?
Things like unequal access to computing power. Who actually gets to build these things? If resources are concentrated, that limits the perspectives involved.
Makes sense. If only a few groups control development.
Exactly. Catherine D'Ignazio from MIT talked about compute, not just the machines, but control over data and access. She argued this concentration of power in a few big players makes AI development less democratic.
And potentially overlooks certain groups' needs.
Precisely. And Margaret Mitchell added a crucial point about data sourcing. The need for consent, credit, and compensation, especially when using data from marginalized communities. She warned against just grabbing diverse data without ethical considerations, calling it exploitative diversification.
So, serious concerns about foundations. What about outputs? Were there positive examples discussed?
Yes, absolutely. Outputs focused on innovative ways AI is being used or could be used to actually benefit women and marginalized groups. Like what?
Regina Barzilay, also from MLT, presented her MRAI model. It uses AI to predict breast cancer risks from mammograms. Huge potential for women's health.
Wow, that's impressive.
Then there was Frida Pauly, discussing an AI hiring tool designed specifically to reduce bias in recruitment. Trying to level the playing field there.
And Sharad Goel from Harvard showcased an AI tool for prosecutors. It strips racial identifiers from police reports.
To try and mitigate bias in charging decisions.
Exactly. Some really promising applications aimed at positive social impact.
Okay, so inputs covered the problems, outputs showed potential solutions. What about the third part? Policy and advocacy.
That tackled the big question. How should we govern AI? How do we promote it responsibly?
Key questions. What were some perspectives?
Raman Chowdhury talked about global efforts to fight digital gender-based harassment and push for AI ethics frameworks. Sandra Wachter from Oxford spoke positively about the EU's AI Act as a regulatory model. Megan Smith, the former US CTO, argued we should focus on fixing current problems with strategies we already have, rather than waiting for perfect future solutions.
Pragmatic approach.
And Rana El-Kalioubi made a strong case for fostering inclusive AI development by actually funding underrepresented founders through her venture firm, Blue Tulip Ventures.
Putting money behind the push for diversity. It sounds like there was a common thread through the whole conference.
Definitely. A consistent message about needing to democratize AI, include diverse voices at every step, and push for much greater transparency, accountability, and ethical oversight.
A really crucial conversation. Okay, on to our final story for today.
Yes, number 5 takes us to Israel, and this is a big one. A nationwide rollout of personalized AI tutors for all K-12 students.
All K-12 students? Wow, that's incredibly ambitious. How are they doing that?
It's a partnership. There's eSelf, an AI platform that uses customizable avatars.
Okay.
And CET, which is Israel's biggest K-12 textbook publisher. Their goal is nothing less than making Israel the first country with national-level AI tutoring.
A personal AI tutor for every child. What will these tutors actually do?
They're described as smart digital tutors, interactive avatars, helping students both in class and out.
Like homework help.
That, yes. Helping prep for exams, explaining concepts from class materials, letting students practice questions, and the key is adapting to each student's individual pace and needs.
That personalization is potentially powerful. You mentioned customizable avatars from eSelf. How does that feature work?
Students can apparently customize the avatar's look and personality. And these avatars can generate tailored visual explanations too, responding to questions, adjusting lessons based on progress, really trying to make learning stick.
Very interactive. What subjects are they starting with?
Initially, it's focused on Hebrew language instruction, but the plan is definitely to expand to be multilingual.
Makes sense for Israel. What's the overarching goal here, beyond just better grades?
They're framing it as boosting educational equity, giving every single student, regardless of background, access to this kind of personalized learning support, boosting confidence too.
Leveling the playing field in theory, is there academic oversight?
Yes, interestingly, Harvard University is serving as an academic advisor for the pilot program.
That adds some weight. What are the advisors saying?
Victor Pereira from Harvard was quoted expressing real enthusiasm. He sees it as potentially transformative, especially for bridging socioeconomic gaps. The idea that every kid gets a virtual tutor.
And the companies involved?
Dr. Alan Becker, eSelf's CEO, called it a historic deployment, a national-scale example of AI for good, aiming to, as you said, level the playing field in education.
It's a massive experiment, really, integrating AI into education not to replace teachers, but supplement them.
Exactly. That seems to be the message. It's a supplement designed to offer personalized, adaptive learning to enhance outcomes and equity for all students.
A significant development to watch.
Absolutely. Well, that covers our 5 stories for this AI Daily Deep Dive on April 22nd, 2025.
We went from Aytekin Tank's hands-on testing of AI agents,
To Anthropic peeling back the layers on Claude's values.
then the Oscars setting rules for AI in movies.
Followed by that crucial Harvard conference on gender and AI.
And finally, Israel's ambitious national AI tutoring program. Quite a range.
It really shows how AI is touching almost everything, doesn't it? From business tools to ethics, creativity, social issues, and education.
It certainly does. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it, about that constant balancing act between harnessing the power of automation and preserving the essential human elements, creativity, judgment, empathy. Where do we draw the lines, and how do we ensure these powerful tools truly serve us well?
A big question to ponder. Thanks everyone for joining us for this focused deep dive into today's AI news. We hope it gave you a useful snapshot of where things stand right now.